Hello, I am Scary Sis.
And I am Scary Bro.
And we are
the Scary Sibs.
Hello, mortals, and welcome to Scary Sibs.
The classic Universal monster movies paved the way for modern horror films as we know them, and gave us many immortal, iconic takes on some well-known monsters. In the 50s through the 70s, however, another film studio, Hammer, added their own mark on horror history by remaking several classic stories.
While these films aren't nearly as iconic as the Universal films, they've still stood the test of time as cult classics and helped immortalize the likes of Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, and more in the public conscience. Today, we will be ranking 10 of our personal favorite monster movies from this studio.
That and
we'll be singing the praises of the brilliant screenwriter known as Scary Bro as he presents his script for his very own Hammer horror film, even though he doesn't work for Hammer.
it's okay, it's the spirit that counts.
So, what masterpiece have you blessed us with this time?
So, it is called Night of the Hammered Nails. 10 innocent teenage nails, one vengeful tool in an abandoned hardware store, fighting to stay alive.
Brother, that's not what Hammer horror means.
I know that. It's a pun.
No. What it is pure rhinoceros dookie.
You know what? Let's do the list. I'll workshop this and get back with you.
Right. So, without further ado, here are the top 10 Hammer horror films that are not about hammers.
Number 10, The Mummy. A team of archaeologists in ancient Egypt uncover the long-lost tomb of Princess Anaka and a mysterious scroll inside. After one of the archaeologists reads it, he learns that the scroll holds a horrifying incantation that brings to life the mummified body of High Priest Karis, who, along with a vengeful Egyptian man named Muhammad Bey, begins hunting down the rest of the expedition for desecrating the tomb, even following them all the way back to England.
Unfortunately, this was a weak version of The Mummy. It lacked the creepy vibe of the 1930s version and was a far cry from the action-packed 1999 Brendan Fraser version. The titular mummy wasn't particularly menacing, and the movie dragged on at times. It was also a bit culturally insensitive, casting white actors as Egyptians and having the villain be a local who was rightfully angry about archaeologists destroying his country's history, so it has not aged well either. As with all these films, the acting was good, and I do like that there was a woman-empowering moment where the wife of one of the archaeologists is the only one who can stop the mummy, but overall this film fell below our expectations.
I agree with Sister. While this film wasn't bad, it was also probably the weakest version of the Mummy we've seen. One positive I can say here is that even though ancient Egyptians in this movie were played by white actors in the flashback sequences, this also did give Christopher Lee the chance to actually speak instead of just roar and grunt as the monster, not something every film on this list can claim.
Number 9, The Horror of Dracula. This film follows Jonathan Harker and his friend Dr. Van Helsing, who plot to end the life of the infamous vampire Dracula. When Harker is discovered and turned into a vampire by Dracula, Van Helsing is left to protect Jonathan's fiancée Lucy and her family from the terror of Dracula as the monster travels to England to victimize Harker's loved ones.
This is a bit more of a straightforward and simplified telling of the Dracula story, opting to cut out more of the details of the story and focus more on the horror. In that, I feel it excels, as this is a truly terrifying depiction of Dracula, the Count being more aggressive and bloodthirsty than in most depictions, where he is more restrained and measured. Hammer film mainstays Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee do an admirable job in their respective roles, as do the rest of the cast. I do wish Dracula spoke more, as Lee's recognizable booming voice fits Dracula perfectly, but we only hear him speak a handful of times.
This film isn't terrible, it just isn't particularly memorable. It is a very cut and dry version of the Dracula story, with little standing out to make itself stand above all the other versions that exist.
Number 8, Phantom of the Opera. After a new opera is set to be performed at the London Opera House, a series of terrifying events plague the performance, including a supposedly haunted audience box, mysterious voices in the walls, and even the murder of a stagehand. The phantom behind the catastrophe also seems to take an interest in the opera's main star, Christine Charles, promising to make her sing perfectly. As the phantom gets more brazen, Christine and producer Harry Hunter learn the dark truth of the phantom's presence and discover there might be a good reason why he's trying to sabotage the show.
A far better version of the story than the original Universal version, which, if you remember from our Universal review, we were not a fan of. I enjoyed the plot and characters far more here. While not exactly scary, this is a suspenseful and thought-provoking movie. The acting, execution, and mystery were all very well done, and I was pleasantly surprised with this version. Now, the film does have its weak spots. The cruel stage manager was annoying, not coming off as creepy or threatening, and the Phantom, while still murderous and lacked in empathy for his mostly innocent victims, still could have been a more menacing presence, and the movie tries too hard to make him sympathetic.
I think this story, by its very nature, is somewhat slower and more dramatic than some of the more classic horror films, making it not amongst our favorite of these classic stories. Still, this particular version was largely an improvement over the Universal version, and we still recommend this depiction.
Number 7, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. This unique take on the Jekyll and Hyde story sees a tenacious and determined, yet disturbed, Dr. Jekyll take his experiments too far when he uses female hormones to try to become immortal. His experiments seem successful at first, until Dr. Jekyll discovers an unsettling side effect. At night, he morphs into a murderous woman who calls herself Mrs. Hyde. As time passes, the line between the two personalities blurs, and as Mrs. Hyde continues to grow stronger, she may end up overtaking her brother entirely.
So this was a very, creative take on the Jekyll and Hyde story. The decision to make him turn into a woman instead of the usual monstrous man Mr. Hyde was definitely a choice, though I do have to say I think it was well done. You still get the terror that presents itself with the Jekyll and Hyde tale of a malevolent personality that threatens to take over your body, and there were plenty of truly tense moments and some surprisingly violent kills. Once you get past the admittedly odd premise, this is a well-done and, dare I say, scary slasher movie.
The word that I can use most to describe this movie is memorable. You really have to just watch it for yourself. We will give it some major props for being a very original take on a well-known story.
Number 6, The Hound of the Baskervilles. Famed detectives Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson travel to Baskerville Hall to solve a murder that seems to be linked to a family curse, in which the Baskerville family is hunted and slaughtered by a demonic dog. With only one remaining Baskerville left, Holmes and Watson are against the clock to uncover the truth behind the supposed curse before it claims its final victim, and maybe the two detectives as well.
So, positives first. I loved Cushing's portrayal of Sherlock Holmes and the eerie mystery that they were trying to unravel. The ending was great, and it was a satisfying movie with a wonderful plot. However, I did find much of the film a bit boring as far as a horror movie goes. It didn't have much going on in the scare department, and I, like many people in this generation, like my movies to have a lot of action and moving the plot along, whereas this movie tends to drag on.
I have to agree with Sister for the most part. I enjoy a good detective story and respect Sherlock Holmes as a character. I just wish this depiction of one of his more famous outings had opted to sprinkle just a little bit of horror into the mix, considering this was made by one of the more well-known horror film studios of the time. Forgive the pun, but I wish that this hound simply had more bite to it. Okay. I think I have a solid script now, Sister. Check this one out. Sledge. The story of a vengeful railroad worker put out of work by the advancement of the automobile. Now, his ghost arises every year with his trusty sledgehammer to bash in the skulls of anyone who drives their car into his haunted tunnel. Huh? Not a killer hammer, a killer with a hammer.
You're still missing the point, brother. Hammer films are reimaginings of classic monster stories, not some half-baked slasher things.
So, have Dracula hit people with a hammer?
For God's sake, take the literal hammer out of it. That's not why they're called hammer films. We've been through this.
Hold on. I have another idea.
Why do I encourage him? Number 5, The Revenge of Frankenstein. Immediately following the events of Curse of Frankenstein, Dr. Victor Frankenstein escapes from execution and starts anew in a different town under the name Dr. Stein. Even though he seems to have good intentions as he provides low-cost care to the poor, old habits die hard as Dr. Stein, once again, starts to try to play God when he attempts to transfer the brain of his paralyzed assistant into a new body. The experiment inevitably goes awry, and the doctor's past threatens to catch up with him.
This was a fitting and somewhat grounded continuation of The Curse of Frankenstein, which itself basically followed the novel story. Here, instead of creating a monster, Frankenstein is continuing his mad experiments by transferring a living human's brain into a new body. As for the subject of this transplant, Carl, we easily feel for him as he just wants to live a normal life like everyone else. While this movie isn't one I would particularly call scary per se, it was both unsettling and tragic as the inevitable unfolds, and raises ethical questions about how far medical science can go before it becomes immoral.
This film, while an unnecessary sequel, was a strong one nonetheless. Dr. Frankenstein is a complex and flawed character, and we feel this was an excellent continuation of his story.
Number 4, The Curse of Frankenstein. The prelude to revenge, as stated before, this film follows the tried and true Frankenstein story, with the titular doctor attempting to create life by attaching together the various parts of different corpses into one monstrous man. While the experiment is technically a success with the monster coming to life, Dr. Frankenstein soon learns the deadly consequences of unrestrained science as his creation threatens to destroy everything he holds dear.
I enjoyed many things about this movie. The acting was great, the story was great. Being the classic tale of Frankenstein, it had dark and thought-provoking themes of the boundaries of science. And it was different enough from the same old Frankenstein story to keep it entertaining. Unfortunately, it just didn't have that Frankenstein feel I wanted, that classic monster movie vibe. It just didn't get it. We don't see much of the monster. This movie is more centered around Victor Frankenstein and his descent into madness. I also don't like that the only female with any screen time was a boring damsel in distress and not at all helpful to the conflict. This movie was essentially a boys' club.
This was a very okay version of the Frankenstein story that I wish had a more present and intimidating monster and a stronger cast of characters outside of Victor himself. This was definitely one of the smarter films on the list, being themed around science and its consequences, and we do think that its strengths definitely outweigh its weaknesses.
Number 3, The Brides of Dracula. Famed vampire hunter Dr. Van Helsing travels to a village in Transylvania and discovers a young woman named Marianne who has caught the attention of the handsome vampire Baron Meinster, who escapes the prison his mother has confined him in and seems to be accumulating brides to turn into vampires. Van Helsing has to call on all of his skills to stop Baron Meinster and keep another young woman from joining his undead entourage.
So, this movie's title is a bit misleading, as it's not actually Dracula himself terrorizing the village and collecting brides. Instead, it's implied that Baron Meinster was turned into a vampire by Dracula in the past. So, if you were expecting the famous Count, you'll be disappointed. This is still, however, a solid vampire movie, and Cushing and the rest of the cast, of course, bring it home in the acting department, and while he lacks Dracula's commanding presence, Meinster is still a very effective monster, and the way he's defeated is certainly inventive, to say the least.
My biggest issue was Baron Meinster himself. I disagree with Brother and think he was a somewhat weak villain, and I wish we had simply gotten Dracula instead. Still, this movie, for what it was very strong and unique.
Number 2, Hands of the Ripper. A psychiatrist takes in a disturbed teenage girl named Anna, whom he aims to rehabilitate after a series of violent episodes. However, this may prove difficult as she is revealed to be the daughter of Jack the Ripper. After a sequence of triggers, Anna frequently falls into a trance where she reenacts her father's bloodthirsty actions. Now, Anna's new caregiver must try to find a way to end these spells for good before any more innocent blood is spilt.
This is a progressive film that I wish was talked about more, as it was groundbreaking for the time. This isn't your classic Moon escapes from the insane asylum and murders everyone film. This is a horror film with deep Freudian themes that seem to take mental health seriously, which is amazing for a movie made back then. The acting in this movie was fantastic by all accounts, and the suspense was great. The tragic ending is perfectly executed, and I have simply no notes.
This is a movie that explores trauma, PTSD, and mental illness in a surprisingly nuanced way, at least for a movie made in the 70s. It's one of the more emotional films in Hammer's repertoire, and worth a watch if you want something deeper than just a monster movie.
Number 1, The Curse of the Werewolf. A beggar is imprisoned inside a castle by a cruel marquise, where he loses his mind and SAs the jailer's daughter. She becomes pregnant and has a child, killing her in the process. The child, cursed to be a werewolf due to the day of his birth, is taken in by a scholar named Don Alfredo Corlido and his housekeeper Teresa, who are unaware of his condition until he grows older and begins acting strangely. When the child, named Leon by Corlido, grows up and tries to build a normal life, he finds that the circumstances of his birth may doom both himself and those around him.
This movie perfectly outlines the tragedy of werewolves. Not only are they forced to become a monster against their will, but there's no cure for them besides death. And poor Leon didn't even get a chance at life. Being cursed from birth means he was doomed from the very moment he was born. When he does become a werewolf, he's absolutely terrifying, as he seems to be an unstoppable force, breaking down doors, ripping open jail bars, and slaughtering anyone in his way. If I had to pick a downside, I wish that the pacing was a little better, as we spend at least a good half hour on the beggar character, and don't even get to the werewolf stuff until much further into the film. But still, this is a deep, scary, and tragic story that has our recommendation.
The acting and effects were great, and while the writing lacked direction and focus at times, this is one of my favorite werewolf films that give us a truly innocent and sympathetic victim who still had the ability to be terrifying.
Okay. I think I've got it figured out now. It's done. My magnum opus. I call it Night of the Horror of the Curse of Dracula's Mummies, Frankenstein's Werewolf, and Sister Hyde.
That is literally the worst title I have ever heard. Did you just take snippets of all the movies we talked about, mash them together?
Of course not. It's all original. Now I just need some professionals to read this, and I'll be in business.
Did someone say professionals with hammer? Yes, perhaps we can assist.
Oh my god. Do you know who these two are?
Isn't that...
The ghosts of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
In the flesh? Well, in the ectoplasm, rather. Ghost joke, never mind.
You're not Lee and Cushing. You're those two guys that do bad impersonations of them.
Don't be foolish, child. We are the esteemed Lee and Cushing.
You don't even sound anything like... Why are they here?
Because the real actors are dead, and even if they were, they probably wouldn't lend their voices to a small YouTube channel, so this is the best we could do. Anyway, tell me what you think of the Night of the Horror of the Curse of...
Yes, we heard you say the title the first time. Just give it here. Interesting.
Well, what do you think?
It's absolute dog shit.
Well, I guess I'm not cut out to be a famous screenwriter. I still have you and Scary Sibs.
Terrific. Well, that was our list of top 10 Hammer horror films. Did you agree or disagree with our picks? Let us know in the comments. And please don't forget to like and subscribe.
Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. Until then, I am Scary Bro.
And I am Sis, and we are
the Scary Sibs.